This is the Shine On You Crazy Daisy podcast, and I'm your host, Trudy Simmons from the Daisy Chain Group, providing platforms for women entrepreneurs to be seen and heard. This platform is for women entrepreneurs that want to hear the real stories of what it takes to be yourself and run a business with all the different hats that you might have to wear. These are the stories of the tenacious, the rebellious, and the resilient women that are working towards the future that they want to build for themselves and their families. What a time we are about to have. Welcome to the Shine On You Crazy Daisy podcast. And thank you so much to Tara Day from Norwex for joining us today and sharing her incredible story of having her own business. Tara, what do you do?
So I help people reduce harmful chemicals in their household and their personal care products. All about sustainability, being eco-friendly, caring for your health and the planet.
Amazing. That's good just in itself. But in your chapter, you talked about your life not being straightforward. Tell us about the start of your journey.
Okay, because it takes me quite back a long way, really. And in my chapter, I talk about a bit of a child bride. I got married at 19 to my lovely hubby. We're still together 31 years later. We're not doing too badly. But my goodness, we have travelled together so many stories, which is probably why we're still together, because we've been through so much. So really, it started when we got married. We were both working full time. My husband was a serving police officer. I was working in education and childcare. And we were quite happy. We were both quite young, not particularly desperate to start a family. But as my training and my kind of trade, if you like, was in early years, obviously, I always wanted a family of my own. So that was just a given, really. And you never think that you're going to have trouble with that, really. So that's kind of where it started. We didn't start trying for a family, if you like, until 5 years in. It then took us 4.5 years before we actually managed to have our first child. And that is the kind of start of our story, if you like, of crazy, traumatic, interesting happenings. Would you like me to go into a bit more detail?
Yeah, please, yeah.
Okay, so after 4 years of trying, and we realised that it wasn't happening, we actually got help, if you like, and we were put on drugs that enabled me to produce the eggs, to have the babies. So it wasn't quite IVF, it was kind of a step before IVF, if you like. But it was, fairly serious stuff. We were being seen in the clinic and at the doctors. And then I discovered I was pregnant. So, of course, really, really excited. Of course, all during that sort of 9 years, we've had family and friends, sort of ask us when we were going to have a family and all that kind of stuff to deal with as well. And then at my 19-week scan, we were told that there were some serious abnormalities and that this little one wouldn't survive outside the womb, basically. So we were offered an abortion. As Christians, we didn't want to take that as the first option. So I made sure I asked all the right questions about, is this little one in pain? Is there any risk to my life? And when they came back and they said, no, not as far as we can work out, heart's still beating, everything else is still fine. The only thing was they didn't have like a benchmark to tell me how far I would go in the pregnancy, because most people at that point would have had an abortion. Yeah. So we decided to carry on with the pregnancy because as far as we were concerned, while this little one was still alive inside me, then it wasn't our job, if you like, to end its life. So we carried on with the pregnancy. As Christians, we asked everybody we knew to pray for us, which was really helpful. And in fact, the one thing that I asked them to pray for, I don't go into this much detail in the book because there wasn't really the space to tell it like this, but people were asking me what to pray for. And I said, the one thing I need prayer for is that this little one goes over 24 weeks, Because I don't know if you realise, but previous to 24 weeks gestation, your baby is considered a miscarriage, even though it's a fully formed human being. So that was really important to me. So obviously I was carrying on going, knowing that the baby wouldn't survive. They kept scanning me and just, making sure I was safe and the baby wasn't in pain. And then at 24 weeks on one day exactly, I went into labour and had our first little boy. We named him Elliot, and as they predicted, he was stillborn because part of his issues were that his lungs hadn't developed properly, so they knew he wouldn't survive sort of once in the open air, if you like. So that was pretty horrid, but we got through it together, with the help of friends and family. And
it's just to talk about it is so powerful and heart-wrenching. And for anybody that reads the chapter, there's so much more that goes into your life. And you do have children now,
yeah,
which is incredible. And I remember the first line of your book being "Family is everything to me," or something along those lines. And to read the whole chapter and to see what you've been through, and for that to be the first sentence, you then further on talk about having breast cancer, and it's like one line in the chapter. And you're obviously a survivor now, but how did that impact your family and your business?
I'd run out of room at that point. I couldn't say too much more. So anyway, we had an interesting time with our 3 children that we do now fortunately have. They have their own stories, which is in the chapter. But the breast cancer, again, was completely out of the blue. I just turned 40. I had this bucket list of stuff to do in my 40th year. We'd just been on a really lovely family holiday, first time ever abroad with the kids, had a wonderful time, came back, and I wasn't sure about something that I'd felt. And I probably dithered about it for far too long, but I ended up going to the doctor about it. They sent me, obviously, for all the tests. And I kind of went to the appointment, thinking, oh, well, I'll just go and it'll be fine. But then they showed me on the scan, and it was definitely a tumour, and you could see it quite clearly. So then it was all steam ahead because it was a fast growing one and they wanted to make sure that they got rid of it.
Yeah.
So I literally was operated on 10 days later.
Wow.
Went through the whole chemotherapy, radiotherapy for the next sort of 9 months it was. Came out the other side, and here I am 10 years later.
Amazing.
Fit and healthy, but that also is a big part of why I do what I do.
Yeah.
Why I chose to do my business, because for me it's all about, I became so aware of the toxins in my environment, the toxins in my body, what I was eating, what I was putting on my skin, what I was breathing in, the whole thing. So when I discovered Norwex, I was so chuffed to have found something that could help me create a safer environment for my family. And then I get the joy of sharing that with others.
What I absolutely love about you, having known you for a few years and networked with you a lot over that time, and nobody knows these stories that are coming out, which I really appreciate. But I think that we don't realize the power of our stories and how they can influence other people or be inspirational to other people. But you are and have always been the epitome of resilience and positive mindset. And you come into networking and you always have something wonderful to say. But how do you keep yours going with the stories that you have from your past and business, what it must have been over the last few years with COVID? How do you keep your positive mindset going?
I think it is a lot to do with having been through what I've been through and all the different situations. I've always been quite a positive person. I always try and look for the best in a situation, in people. I try not to judge. But I think having learned from all those different situations, I mean, my son, who's he's the third child after Elliot and then Georgia. He was born at 27 weeks, and we went through an absolute roller coaster with him, nearly lost him 3 times. And now he's a hulking, great big, nearly 18-year-old who is absolutely fine, which is a real blessing. But I think when we were going through that with him, and, you know, any minute of any day, you didn't know whether you were going to get a phone call from the hospital. You just have to be positive. You have to hope. And obviously having a faith was massive for us. Again, we had everybody on the prayer chains everywhere, all across the world. So I think that's a massive thing for me. But I just, you know, when I had the breast cancer, people said to me, "Oh, you're so brave." And I said, well, I don't really have an awful lot of choice.
Yeah.
But I could stick my head in the sand and say, woe is me. Or I could go, right, okay, I'm going to hit this head on. I've been through plenty before. I know I can get through this. And my family and my friends and my church were just incredible. And, you know, it's just wonderful to know that there is that support out there. But I think it is just ingrained in me. I'm just positive, probably stupidly sometimes.
No, but I think you've absolutely summed it up. It's belief, faith, and hope. And when you've got those things in who you are and what you want to put out into the world, whether it's business or anything else, then, and you have all of those things in spades. What is one lesson that you've learned that you would want every entrepreneur to know?
I think it has to be always have hope. Always, and never ever give up. Because I just find, like, with a positive mindset, and this goes for anybody in any walk of life, you can be an I can't person or you could be an I can person. And I think if you choose to be the I can, to keep smiling even through the trauma and the troubles, you're giving yourself some, you know, hope in that process that there is going to be light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah. And I don't really know otherwise how I can put it. I just know that that's always been how I am. Yeah. Is facing things rather than turning your back on them and hoping they go away, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's facing them with that hope and belief, which is a beautiful way to be in the world. I'm the same. That's what I do as well. And it makes positive mindset an easier conversation, but it doesn't mean that you don't have those times that things hit you, but it's having that belief and hope in what the future can hold.
Yeah.
Oh, Tara, that's wonderful. What's your favorite business book?
Okay, so I was introduced to this a number of years ago. I'm going to hold it up for the camera. It's called The Energy Bus by John Gordon. And this was at a leadership conference that I went to with Norwex. And it's just basically a really, really positive book about how to view situations that you're in. It talks about having people join your bus. And it's all about how you treat them. So I think every employer ought to read The Energy Bus, because it's all about the people that are joining your journey with you. Yep. And how they appear. And, you know, you might get somebody that doesn't see the I can bit, they're an I can't person. And it's your job and your role as their leader to help them see that there is an I can choice. Yep. And it's about the energy that you bring both to your business, but also to your team. And I think that's relevant, you know, in any working life, really. And I think a lot of employers probably would get more from their employees if they had that attitude.
Tara, what an absolute pleasure to talk to you. And I really hope that this chapter goes far and wide, that people read your story and realise that through all adversities, there is a positive way to come out of these things, and that you're living proof of that. So I really appreciate your vulnerability in the book. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's been lovely to share my story. It's been something I've wanted to do for a long time. So I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Tara. Thank you so much for watching the Shine On You Crazy Daisy podcast. If you've liked what you've seen today, then please make sure that you click the subscribe button to this channel to see more inspiration and motivation as more of these stories keep coming out. And if you want even more, click on the link below this video and go and have a look at the series of books Shine On You Crazy Daisy and get even more inspiration and motivation for you and your business.